Hi everyone, Kathleen here again. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to talk about the place of the youth in Igad, peace and security policies. So when I'm talking about Igad, I'm talking about countries in the Horn of Africa, which include Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Uganda, and South Sudan. So the UN Security Council, the Solution 225 of 2015, and the UN Security Council Solution 2419 of 2018 calls for youth inclusivity and equal participation in decision making. When we look at Igad, the youth constitute about 70% of the total population, an indicator that the youth constitute the largest proportion of the population. One of the major aims of Igad is to broker peace and security in the region or among the member states. And so the question comes in is, what steps has Igad made towards this aim, and what is the place of these initiatives in member states, and where do we find the youth, or where is the youth placed in these policies? What is missing and what needs to be done to ensure that the youths are incorporated? So Igad has had several advancements when it comes to peace and security promotion in the region, evident in its peace and security strategies since 2010 to 2020 and the ongoing peace and security protocol. They also have a number of departments that are geared towards promotion of peace and security, which include the Conflict Early Warning Response Mechanism, famously known as Z1, and the Igad Security Sector Program, as well as the Office of Special Envoy to South Sudan, that is aimed at proclaiming peace in the country. And finally, we have various trainings and workshops that are held almost every year. So, with all these advancements, I find the Department of Igad Security Sector Programs very, very important, because it has four major pillars that are very, very vital towards ensuring peace and security in the Igad region. So the Igad Security Sector Program has four pillars, which include the counterterrorism and radicalization pillar. We have the maritime safety and security. There's the transnational organized crime, and there's also the security institutional capacity building that basically incorporates aspects of demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration, as well as security sector reforms. So these are very, very important pillars, and these are very important departments and important advancements that Igad is doing. But we should also remember that Igad does not operate in isolation. Igad is not a country. It's just a body. And the success of Igad depends on the commitment of member states to implement and execute the resolutions, the strategies, and the initiatives that they come with. They come up with as countries whenever they meet, whether it is in Nairobi, Kampala, Addis Ababa, and so forth. So the question that we ask ourselves, Igad has made these advancements. We see them in their websites, we see them in their newsletters, we see them in their papers all the time. What is the place of these initiatives, strategies, and solutions in member states? How has each individual member state adopted or implemented the Igad policies? So the first thing that I realized that sometimes these policies and initiatives, strategies, and agreements are never honored. And a good example is in South Sudan. Today, Igad will broker a deal, a peace deal, and 2-3 months later, one of the parties decides not to honor part of that deal, and the country goes back to fighting. Another thing is lack of enforcement of Igad resolutions against member states, and this has been largely informed by sensitivity or oversensitivity of member states on sovereignty and interference of internal affairs in other countries. And a very good example that demonstrates this is when Eritrea decided to back out of Igad to avoid direct military intervention in Somalia. And then we also have incapacity of the one to detect conflict indicators across the entire sub-region. Events in the Igad member states or in the Igad region shows that actually the conflicts kind of get the countries in a surprise. All Igad is never aware that these conflicts are going to happen, despite having a body that is supposed to detect signs of early warning or early signs of conflicts. So this could be attributed to the lack of cooperation or in lack of the will to share information from member states, and all to accept that actually there's a problem or there's an issue and like we need help to solve this. So with all these weaknesses of IGAD and with this negative reception of IGAD policies in member states, then what is the place of the youth in these policies? Where do we find the youth? Do we really have the youth in these policies? Do we really have the youth in these strategies? Are the youths actually part and parcel of making these policies or solutions right from the decision making process to the implementation phase of all these strategies and initiatives? So when I look at these policies and security initiatives and strategies, the youth in the Igad region have come up with so many strategies, be it talks, be it cultural events, be it football matches, be it awareness campaigns to call for peace and security in the region. But that said and done, within Igad itself as a body, the youth voices have been captured through workshops and trainings. But one thing or where the problem starts is where we realize that this inclusivity in security and peace promotion in the region, especially when it comes now to policies and resolutions, the youth voices largely remain on papers or in talks. And I'm talking about remaining on papers that they are never translated to reality. They remain in talks either through the questions they raise in these trainings, the presentations they make, or through the publications they make whenever there's a call for papers, or whenever there's a competition, or whenever somebody feels like I should write about a problem or a security issue in the Igad region. These voices have not been translated to a comprehensive policy and reality. Basically, in key resolutions and decision making about security and peace in the region, the youths have been left at the periphery. So the question that comes in again, why do we have youths' voices missing in Igad peace and security policies and resolutions, despite the fact that number one, the youth constitutes the largest proportion of the population in Igad regions, and number two, that we have youth voices being captured in the trainings and workshops that are held by Igad? So the answer is very simple. There is no favorable and sustainable environment in Igad member states that can successfully and completely accommodate the really youth in peace and security in the region. So what we have in Igad member states is a culture of patriarchal structure of leadership where we have the men elders, the women elders, and the children. So the youth are still classified as children, and each time we want to have a youth agenda being discussed, we don't pick a youth to take this youth issue on the final decision making table. Instead, we pick an older person, perhaps 45 to 60 years old, and cite aspects of experience, the sensitivity of the matters involved, youth being violent actors, youth not being in a position to deliver, all youth not being performers, and we let these people we let these people take the youth agenda to the final decision making table, and we leave the really youth outside there. So we find the older people getting a chance to be called youth representatives. So we give an old person who is not a youth agenda, all to go and give the youth problems before a certain panel or before a certain body that is making a decision that is also affecting the youth. And this has been always the case in peace and security policies in Igad member states. You find somebody is very old but is manning the youth ministry. So when we'll be having youth and security whatever in the region, this minister will be representing the Minister of Youth, and he will go there as a youth to give the youth problems. But the question is, how do we expect somebody who has passed the age of the youth to start focusing on the youth problem and not the problems that are affecting him within that age bracket? Because security and peace policies and all security and peace dynamics impacts on different category of people in the society differently. How security or how war or violence impact on the youth is not the same way it may impact on the elderly, on the women, on the children, on the physically disabled, and so forth. So we fail to look at this diversity when it comes to the impacts of security and conflicts of insecurity and conflict in Igad region. And because we assume that, we also assume this diversity when it comes to decision making and implementation as far as security and the peace strategies and resolutions and policies in Igad are concerned. So basically what we have done, we have made peace and security decisions an elite affair, all are reserved for a few elite in the society. So we know that, for example, if there is going to be a peace procuring bill somewhere, we will have presidents. Majority are not under the category of youth. We will have maybe the ministers from the Ministry of Youth and Youth Affairs. Majority who are 60 years and above, or 50 years and above, and they have passed the age of the youth. So this is how we end up closing the youth voices outside there, because even if the youth spoke so much outside there, if their voice is not taken up to the decision-making table and incorporated in these policies, how do we expect the youth to implement these policies? So what then should we do? Number one, we should stop the narrative of youth as leaders of tomorrow. Let the really youth join the big boys in the decision-making table. Let the really youth carry the youth voice and the youth agenda to that decision-making table. Let the elderly bring their ideas. Let the women bring their ideas. Let the men bring their ideas. And let's have everybody, let this differently abled bring their ideas. We meet at the final decision-making table. We bring our voices together. This is how this thing is affecting us. This is how it's affecting us. And we come up with a common policy or with a common framework in peace and security that is going to help us promote peace, reduce conflict, and foster security in the region. But having a few individuals, majority who are the elderly, and running the peace and security agenda as a patriarchal idea that should follow a certain downward trend where we have the father, the mother, and the child, is not going to promote any inclusivity of the youth. It's not going to promote inclusivity of even the differently abled individuals in Igad region as far as peace and security is concerned. And we also need to have youth economic and social needs met, or else the youth purge theory will find it is relevance. We keep on talking about the youth being perpetrators of violence. If we did our survey and study so well, you will realize that majority of the youth that we call perpetrators of violence don't even know where they are fighting. They have only fallen prey of warlords and war entrepreneurs who are exploiting their desperate state of the youth in Igad region to incorporate them and use them as apparatus of violence. A youth who is jobless, very desperate, doesn't know whether he will even have today's meal, and he gets a warlord who is ready to use maybe her or him for 5 hours or 1 hour and giving money. Or what do you expect? The disparate nature of the youth is also driving them to violence. So instead of looking at the youth as actors of violence, let us solve the real youth problem. The social and economic needs of the youth need to be met, so that we prevent or we protect the youth from falling prey of warlords and war entrepreneurs in the Igad region. So my punchline: let the youth sit with the big boys in the decision-making table for us to have the youth voices being heard and being incorporated and translated to reality as far as peace and security policies and resolutions in Igad region is concerned. Thank you so much.